So in this module, I'm going to go through with you some of the principles of post-traumatic growth, and you can use some of these principles and reframes and ways of approaching situations or taking things from situations in order to help you process old stored events from the past. So decades of research have been done about post-traumatic growth, and there have been a certain amount of key findings, like sort of patterns and principles. And what I'm doing here is I'm combining research on post-traumatic growth with my own findings in client case studies, and I'm going to go through some of the main components for you. So first, what is post-traumatic growth? Well, in just a nutshell, post-traumatic growth is the ability to transform in a positive and healthy manner after a traumatic event or situation. And remember, we were talking about trauma earlier. Like, trauma is a very large spectrum, and trauma can be things like, the meaning you gave to a situation when you felt bullied or shamed, or it can be something like a car accident and this severe mental, emotional, and physical experience that takes place. So it can sort of be anywhere along the spectrum, and it's the things that our nervous system can't properly process, so it sort of reorganizes itself around, and we create this subconscious storage around. And so when we look at what post-traumatic growth is it's our ability to take these events and actually make something from it, that doesn't necessarily negate how painful the event was, but that can help to equilibrate the imbalance of how much pain it caused by us being able to take something powerful away from it. So there are these sort of main components, and one of the first components about people who bounce back from traumatic events is that they are able to be compassionate towards themselves, okay? And this means not critical, not perfectionistic, and sort of this absence of self-judging and shaming. And so this is an important pattern, as we sort of talked about from the 9 steps, to adopt in the relationship to yourself if it's around an old event that took place that was painful for you, that you are trying to heal and move through, okay? Number 2, post-traumatic growth also occurs in our ability to question the stories we've made about ourselves because of the traumatic experience. So it's not uncommon that when we have a trauma, and this can be something that's taking, by the way, up a big piece of emotional real estate in your subconscious mind that's creating, these compulsive behaviors that you're trying to escape from. It can be these overall patterns that you have, or this, 1 or 2 really traumatic specific events that you have, and this might be what you want to process out by adopting these principles of post-traumatic growth and how you approach the situation and how you re-observe the situation in the relationship to yourself. So our ability to question the stories we have made up about ourselves because of the traumatic event. So it's easy, for example, to say, oh, I was in an abusive situation and therefore I'm weak, right? But maybe you weren't weak. Maybe you were just in a really horrible situation and didn't have a better way to respond or a better set of tools to get rid of the situation or get away from the situation faster. Or maybe you make, the ending of a relationship mean that you're unloved, and maybe the person fell out of love with you in a way that was, romantic, but maybe the person still loves you in a caring way, or maybe you're loved by lots of other people in your life. And so we can make these stories up, and we can live in these emotional realities because we believe those stories if they pass through our subconscious mind on autopilot. And we can live momentarily or for prolonged periods of time in a space where we just believe that we are unloved and weak. And these might be really false assumptions about ourselves when we really bring them into the light and question them. Now, that's part of principle number 2. But we can also, if we have these things and they are truths, okay, or if we really believe that they're a truth, then we can also find post-traumatic growth by creating the ability to take these stories and create a life that opposes them instead. Okay, so maybe your story is that I'm oppressed, and maybe you really were oppressed. Well, how can we take something from the experience? Well, we can recognize that that was a really painful thing to go through, and we can dedicate a portion of our lives to living in alignment with not being oppressed any longer, and we can create strategies and solutions and meet the needs to feel free and powerful and empowered in our own individual lives. And so if you recognize, ooh, this was a pain point in the past, what I see in case studies of people all the time is that if somebody feels, let's say, disempowered in their childhood, and then somebody disempowers them in their adult lives, it's very personal and it really hurts. But if somebody feels disempowered in their childhood, and then they really empower themselves in their adult lives, if something along the lines of their adult lives disempowers them again, it doesn't really hurt as much as if they hadn't done the work to properly empower themselves first. And so I often find that there's this strong relationship or correlation between how much power an old wound still has over you now, based on how much work you've done around building a life that isn't in alignment with still feeling that way any longer. And so a principle here for post-traumatic growth is, if I want to overcome a past trauma, I have to take all the pain points of it and I have to see to it that these patterns are no longer going to exist in my life in the same way again. And in doing that, you actually help yourself to move through that exact trauma. Okay? You sort of heal the past through the present, if that makes sense. Principle number 3 of post-traumatic growth is your ability to see the lessons and opportunities in this painful experience. And again, this isn't to negate that, oh my gosh, there was a trauma and ouch, it was traumatic, it really did hurt. It doesn't take away the fact that something was painful, but we can grow from the experience by recognizing that darkness has its teachings and that pain is here for us at times to grow and can even sometimes bring some of life's most sacred and important lessons. So there may not always be opportunities that come out of a trauma, but sometimes powerful changes can take place as a result of pain. So a really great question to ask yourself is, what came out of this painful or traumatic event in the past? What new possibilities? What new relationships? What was I forced to let go of that was no longer serving me? What old wounds were healed because this brought them to the surface and showed them to me? How was I able to reconnect with others? How was I able to gain a deeper spiritual connection to myself or through a community like a church? And what did I learn from this painful experience, and how did I grow? Now, if you find that, these things haven't happened to you, you haven't found opportunities or lessons from the experience yet, you can go back and re-ask yourself those questions, but in the framework of how can I choose to take something from this, okay? So let's say, for example, that it's a divorce, okay? And it was a really traumatic divorce, and you're saying, what new relationships came out of this? And maybe you haven't found any new relationships yet. Okay, well, you know what? It's time to give yourself permission to go out and build new relationships. And I don't mean like go get married again tomorrow in a romantic way. I mean like go build new friendships, go, invest yourself in a community, do volunteer work, do things that are going to empower that area of your life. And so you can go in there, and if you haven't taken away something already, it's time to give yourself permission to look for ways to grow because of that painful experience in the past. Okay? And then the next common principles for what creates growth and feelings of healing and empowerment after trauma are intentionally creating new relationships as a whole, okay, and including the relationship with yourself. And these are the things that are really showing up in research, historically outside of my own research with clients. Intentionally working on appreciation for what you do have after a challenging time. It is not uncommon for individuals who go through a traumatic event to suddenly have a much deeper appreciation for life. And this is sort of a perception to adopt. This does happen naturally for some people, and for others it doesn't. And so look for, okay, maybe you went through a health crisis and then you survived it, and it's like, wow, like, thank goodness for my health. Thank goodness I survived that. Thank goodness for everything that I do get to have and create. And so we want to be able to intentionally create this perception of gratitude, having moved through and survived that experience. Connecting to your own emotions. Sometimes this happens out of necessity. Sometimes it happens because we don't have a choice. But connecting to our emotions is very much like connecting to a lost or disconnected aspect of ourselves, and this really strengthens the relationship to ourselves, and it allows us to feel and be open and receptive and empathize and connect and have compassion for others more. And so sometimes that's a beautiful sort of shift that can come out of a traumatic event. And lastly, it is not uncommon for individuals to report that after a traumatic event they connect to something greater. So this can be your belief in something outside of yourself, God, karma, the universe, that things are interconnected, whatever that is for you. See if you can define that, if anything did come up that way as a result of a challenging event that you went through. So you can ask yourself, where have I already created these things? And if I'm not finding them, how can I intentionally create these things instead? Okay, and And these are really beautiful things that will help you to shift your relationship to stored subconscious pain that's the result of a traumatic event or experience that you maybe haven't had the chance to fully process yet. And so if you're looking for how can I intentionally create these things, you want to create some strategies and action steps and work that process. And so I will see you in the next module where we will talk about other important habits when it comes to breaking addictive patterns. Some final important parts to breaking addictive patterns. So here are some wonderful exercises that you can do to sort of supplement this journey of work that I've given you so far. And these are sometimes very powerful exercises and sometimes very deep. And they're important to practice. See what really resonates with you. They are outlined in your workbook. See what resonates and then give yourself the time and space to do some of these things. So number one, I'm actually taking this from 12 steps in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's a beautiful exercise, and it sort of comes in what I'm going to put into two parts. Part number one is to take a moral inventory of your life. And you want to ask yourself, where have I gone wrong? And where have I done things that I feel ashamed of or guilty about? And while this isn't obviously easy or like fun to do, this is really powerful to do because wherever we store subconscious guilt or shame, because of past experiences or events, we're likely to think that we are undeserving or unworthy. If we have these beliefs about ourselves stored subconsciously and we believe as a result that we're bad, we're unworthy, we're shameful or defective, what are we likely to do? We are likely to feel like we're not deserving. And as a result of carrying that subconscious perception about ourselves, we're also likely to sabotage our relationships. We're likely to sabotage abundance. We're likely to sabotage feeling like we deserve to feel good and happy. So we really want to clean up that subconsciously stored guilt and shame by then either questioning the meaning we gave to the situation, sort of reverting back to those earlier steps, or habit number two, which is a follow-up to habit number one, is through making amends. And this is also borrowed from AA. So making amends essentially means I'm going to go back to those experiences, those wrongdoings that I took part in, and I'm going to have those conversations, express apology, do something about it. And sometimes this isn't even something you have to do with a person directly, or sometimes it can be something you did and you don't have a way of contacting that person any longer. If there was something you said that was rude or bad, or something you did that you feel guilt or shame for. So if you can't do it with others, you can practice doing this in relationship to yourself and recognizing, like, I do feel sorry for having done that, and I didn't know any better at the time, and I was acting out of a place of desperation and pain. And according to what I was thinking or believing the moment before I did that thing, I felt like I had no other option, or I felt like I had to do that thing. And recognize, like, I'm going to replace this judgment with self-understanding and self-compassion, and I'm going to extend that to other people wherever I see an opportunity to. And so that will be a really important piece in order to transform some of those stored pain points. And it's a wonderful habit to get into, and you'll feel a lot of release and beauty come out of that experience. So, and a third wonderful habit is to practice changing your environment. I mean, this can be really important, especially as you're healing through addictive patterns of behavior. Like we were saying earlier, your environment plays a role. Your perception of your environment plays a bigger role. But when you're in a fragile space, if you're really just trying to get back on your feet, if you were really consumed, for example, by an addictive pattern or behavior, then you want to take inventory. Who's unhealthy in my life? Where do I need boundaries? Where do I need to completely cut somebody out of my life? Or people, maybe I have a bunch of friends who are still doing my drug of choice all day, every day, and encouraging me to do it. Obviously you don't want to put yourself in harm's way that way, and it can be really necessary out of love towards yourself and commitment to your healing to change that environment. So who brings you backwards and doesn't respect your desires to move ahead and heal? And what kind of boundary do you need? Don't just say, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to cut out these people. Define the boundary so that you can stick to it and so that you can communicate it in a healthy way. Tell yourself, okay, it means I'm not going to talk to these people on the phone either, or text them. I'm going to get a new phone number. I'm going to, get really clear. The clearer your boundaries are ahead of time, the less they're going to be challenged later on. Okay. Habit number 4. It's a great post motivator to solidify your healing process by creating your why. So, remember, as we're changing patterns, neural pathways atrophy over time as new ones are being created. And this is a process. So, we want to look for, what's my why to keep up this process? What's my why? What are the positives of ending this addictive pattern of behavior? Why does it matter? How does it serve me? Both short-term and long-term. How does it serve me in the 7 areas of life? And how does it not just serve myself, but the people I love around me? So taking inventory to create that post-motivation as you move through some of these earlier steps and habits is really, really important to do. Healthy habit number 5. You've got a healthy habit checklist, which is also mapped out in long form inside of our life mapping course inside the school. And in that healthy habit checklist, you'll see that you can write out your needs, you can write out daily habits that connect you to yourself and your desires to create new patterns. And these healthy habits also encourage things like meditation, yoga, exercise, things that just really get you into a healthy, positive relationship to yourself across the 7 areas of life. And so you can see that worksheet for suggestions and a way to sort of schedule these things into your personal time. Healthy habit number 7 I'm going to suggest is taking life inventory. So, wherever we feel disempowered in any of the 7 areas of life, the more empowerment and balance and wholeness we can create across the boards in each of the 7 areas of life, usually the better we feel about our lives, and obviously then we have less subconscious pain to avoid through pleasure or relief-seeking behaviors. So a great thing to do is take inventory of yourself in each of the 7 areas of life. Where am I feeling stuck or disempowered? And then create strategies to support yourself in this way. How can I strengthen this area of my life? How can I empower? What specifically is blocking me? And just to really take a look. And that sort of gets you that first step to making changes and creating more power and balance across all areas of your life as a human being. And step 7 is all about really defining your relationship to spirituality, because while I don't think this has to be an absolute necessity to a path of sobriety or to a path of ending addiction as a whole, I think that it is very important to really get in touch with what life means to you, what death means to you, what wellness and fulfillment mean to you. And so you can ask yourself, like, what does spirituality mean to me? How can I support myself in this way? Do I just need to explore this part of myself? Because this is one of the 7 areas of life. So how can I strengthen my relationship to God or whatever I might believe in? Maybe I just am an atheist, but I become a meditator. And I know that that's, useful and empowering for myself as a whole, as a human. Maybe it's about getting into relationship with yourself. Maybe for you, spirituality is about practicing forgiveness and releasing holding grudges. It can be so many different things, but it's really important to explore this. And there's a lot of research that's been documented to support this. It's really important to explore your relationship to what spirituality means. And the last major suggestion that I'm going to give you in this course is to increase the connection in your life. Okay, this is a really big piece as well that shows up in addiction research, is what does connection look like to you? Is it harmony? Is it depth of connection to one or two main people? Is it consistency, safety? What makes you feel connected? And who brings this to you in your life, and how can you get more of this in the places that it's unmet? And you can write these things out in your workbook and then promise yourself that you'll make a commitment to taking small action steps on a regular basis that move you closer to being more empowered in this area of your life. So thank you so much for being here with me on this course. I hope you received a lot of useful information, and please feel free to ask any questions in the live webinars that we'll be doing, especially related to this course, as well as in the personal development Facebook group or inside the school, inside the forum. Thank you so much.